How's it going, friends, and welcome to the channel. In this video, making our own oil streaks from Artist Oils, some bizarre camo pattern, and blue. So this group build is of Airfix's 148th Spitfire Mark XII, and of course it's just about having a little bit of fun. And at the back end of November, Jadlam got in touch with Moz from Moz 6510 Models and asking if any of us guys of the Airfix and Chill team on a Monday night were interested in getting involved in this group build. So Jadlam has this kit on offer at $14.99. I'm assuming part for this group build. The group build rules are actually very simple. All you need to do is build up your model, I suppose in whichever way fashion you want, and just enter in by the 1st of November. By the time all you need to do is have sent them 3 photos of your finished model, and you can see your first, second and third prizes for entering the competition. So the kit itself, as I said before, it's a 2011 release. It's not actually a bad kit. It's only on 2 sprues, apart from the clear, which I suppose makes it 3, but the main build itself is just a long on 2 sprues. It is a very simple and very quick to build kit. To be fair with this one, I just wanted to get the kit actually built as quickly as I possibly could with no real extra real work gone into it. I did add some seat belts into it, as I always do, because it just uplifts the kit. I had the sort of lying around spare from previous builds, but like I said, I just wanted to get this build done relatively quickly without any hassle and just get round to the painting stage. But nevertheless, I'll still talk a little bit about the kit. Now again, very nicely detailed. It's made up in about, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 sort of subsections within the cockpit. Obviously these days now, you know, a lot of the kits, especially Airfixes, you know, the cockpit is made into sort of a tub part and slid into place, but in the case of this one, it's not. It's still some like the old, where you have to make up a lot of effectively all the ribbed areas. So obviously, like with the pilot seat and the ribbon behind before it goes into the main fuselage, and the instrument panel up front. One of the things I do show you in the instructions, as you can see here, is that you need to get these sections as perfectly square as you possibly can, because it will make it a little bit difficult for you to be able to put the fuselage together without having any major gaps. Now with this one, you can have the option with the undercarriage up or down. Now if you want to have the undercarriage down, you need to cut out the rear undercarriage door, because it is actually moulded in a closed position, which actually, to be fair, if you want to do it in the flying position, makes things a lot quicker. Plastic's a little bit tough, admittedly, to try and cut this out, but with a good sharp hobby blade and a little bit of time and making sure you don't slice your fingers off, you can cut this out quite nicely. Now what I wanted to do here is, because a couple of the instruments sort of sit over some of the ribbing, so you can see I've just added a little bit of glue on that sort of, like, I'm going to call it like a half rib there, because this instrument, which I can't remember which it is obviously you can see there's like this sort of plus section on the back. So I'll put a bit of glue on the bottom of that half rib so I can glue it into place. I can take that section out and be able to paint it separately, and be able to, again, when we come to fitting it all into place, will fit in the right position. But again, that's the way I'm doing it, because I like to make things a lot more awkward. I probably could have actually painted this in situ, because I'm doing a very simple paint job on the cockpit anyway. So because I'm not doing this in a traditional spit markings, I've decided to go my own way with this. So I thought, what's the point in having a traditional looking cockpit? So I've made this sort of greyish brown sort of colour using Sky Grey XF19 from Tamiya and Buff XF57, also from Tamiya as well, to make this sort of weird whatever colour I've made up here. And for the wash, I actually use black. Now black is something I don't tend to use, because I do find it comes out a little bit too stark sometimes, but I decided to do it with this one anyway. But as you can see, I've laid a layer of thinners down first, then put the panel liner over the top of it, and then what I'll do afterwards is then I'll come in with a slightly dampen brush again of just thinners, and then just sort of move that around and just sort of thin it out a little bit further and just give it that sort of shaded, sort of dirt look effect to the cockpit. Once that dry, I then come back in with the original colour with a little bit more buff into it, and then just all I did was highlight all the panels and race surfaces. No particular reason why for this, I just thought I'd try something a little bit different and sort of bring out the panels a little bit further. Again, you know what cockpits are like. The visibility inside once they're all built up is quite limited, but I just fancied doing it for just something a little bit different to do, I suppose. So here you can see my Edard seat belts. I don't think they're actually the right one for the era, but again, it doesn't matter. It's not accurate in the slightest. I mean, that seat belt should go back through that slit in the armour plate at the back. I did try and cut it out, but I gave up. So I wasn't worrying too much about it because it didn't need to be overly accurate. The instrument panel, I just painted black and dry brushed white over. Weirdly, there is no decals for this in the kit whatsoever. So again, not too fussed because again, it's something you're not really going to see. Now, as we move on to the wings, we do need to make one small hole in particular because there's an aerial that sticks out the bottom. If you want to have the slipper tank that goes on underneath, you will also need to drill the holes out for that as well, but obviously that is an optional part. But as you can see, the wings, top and bottom, they fit very nicely and glue together very well. There's actually very little cleanup needed to do across the front leading edge. One thing I need to remember to do, which I always forget to do on Spits, is put this light in. I'm not sure what the light's actually for. I was going to say a landing light, but it's not a landing. I don't think it's a landing light. Anyway, it's a light that goes in. We have to remember to put that in before we put the wings to the main fuselage. Now, the one thing I do like to do with any form of lights that I put into a kit is that I always use a chrome pen over the back. This sort of gives the impression of the sort of reflective part that goes in the back of the lenses of lights, and I think it gives a good effect. It's also really good to put on if you're going to put a colour over the top of the clear part, which makes these lenses pop a little bit more. Also, we need to put on the wing tips. Obviously this is the clip one, so obviously a very short wing tip that we need to add on. They're handed, so you don't have to worry too much about these because they do have specific tabs. So on the one side it's got two, the other it has one, so it makes it very simple. The one thing I was surprised about is that there's actual no clear lens for the obviously the navigational lights on the wingtips, which I do think was a little bit odd. So obviously that's something you can either just leave as is or attempt to paint on at the end of the build. So as the wings meet the fuselage, these actually go on really nicely. Now I usually, particularly a lot of the older kits, you usually tend to find there's a large gap between the wing roots and the main wing. In this case, there's not the case, but it is at the front for some reason, and there is a little bit of a gap at the back. I will fill these in, but the one at the rear, I'm not going to worry too much about making look all pretty because it's generally the part of the aircraft you don't see very well anyway. But I will be filling these later on. Then we have the covers for the larger pistons for the Griffin engine. And they did this just to make things easier rather than making the fuselage larger. They just sort of basically cut out a big hole for these heads to go through and then just put a nice fairing over the top. Now I know for these ones the fuselage nose is very P40-esque, which I find is a bit weird, but on later ones they're this lovely teardrop shape. The tailplanes, again, nice and simple, singular moulded pieces. They are obviously handed, but because the way they are moulded, you've got a larger section of the fairing underneath, which again makes it very easy to get them put onto the right sides. Again, the rudder and elevators are a very simple affair. The elevators are one singular piece with a small block that goes into to hold them into place, which also makes them positionable, which is also very nice. And again, exactly the same for the rudder. There's no particular placing pins for these, so you can actually set this in any sort of which way fashion that you like. The ailerons are also the same, you can position them as any angle that you like, but for some reason the radiator is just open. Don't know why there's no option for that. Doesn't really matter, I don't think, but I just find it a bit odd. The elevators as well are positionable. There are two separate parts for each individual part, so you cannot, again, like I said, have them open or closed. Just basically the open ones have a tab so you can fit it onto the lower half of the wing. Now, this is only one of two annoyances I actually had with the kit, was one of which was the seam line that went down the sort of bonnet of the aircraft, which was a bit of a pain in the backside to get rid of. The other one was these ejector pin marks on the ailerons. Fortunately, they are raised, so it does make it a little bit easier to clean these up. Also, they're on the bottom again, so you're not going to see them overly well. But yeah, bit of a weird one, but yeah, easy clean up, so it wasn't too bad, I suppose. I'm probably picking holes at this for no real reason, because generally this kit goes together quite nicely. And what I did with the same as with all the control surfaces, I just sort of put them slightly out of being completely aligned with the aircraft, just to generate a little bit of interest on the controls. So now we can move on to the interesting part of this build, which is the painting. So like I said at the start, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So what I've decided to do is go with a bit of a Jurassic Park theme. Now, I was going to go for a different Jurassic Park theme, but talking with my friend Fenris, who's also in part of this group build, he's doing the other version that I wanted to do. I won't tell you what it is, just get you to go and check his channel out when that video is up. So I've gone for something different. I didn't want to do the same thing, you know, just be a bit stupid really. So although it's not going to be completely accurate, I'm basing mine off the Raptor Blue from the newer Jurassic Park films. So for the base coat, I've gone for quite a concoction of colours for this. So I've used khaki drab, khaki, ocean grey, and a little bit of buff. So I made this sort of effectively an IDF green sort of colour, which I actually have. I might as well just used in general, but I didn't realise that was the colour I was really going for. I was kind of going for this sort of greeny grey colour that I've sort of think is right on the Raptor. Then for the top, it's kind of very a German-esque kind of pattern in a roundabout way. So I've done this sort of tiger stripe pattern across the entire spine and hood of the Spit. For the colours for this, I think, because I've used such a concoction, I think I actually might have used the same base colour, but added rubber black to make it this sort of greeny grey sort of colour. It's very difficult to see. The lighting I have in my spray booth does change the colour slightly, but trust me, everything has a bit of a green hue to it. I also sort of mimicked the pattern on the leading edge and upper surface of the Spitfire, just sort of accentuate it a little bit further than what I did on the fuselage, because obviously this is a lot of a larger area. So eventually I'll bring this down a little bit further and make some of the stripes slightly larger. I also want to mention that I did this with my Gallery 98 airbrush. I was sent these from Gallery a couple of, well, good few months back now, and I've been using them for a long time, and I've got to say they are generally a really good airbrush, and they're great for this sort of detailing. So I have other videos on the airbrush itself mainly. I've been using it quite a lot. You've seen a lot of my videos recently. But if you're interested in this airbrush, go and check some of those videos out and the video on the airbrush itself. But also, if you are interested, there is an affiliate link down below, which obviously is no extra cost to you, and it helps a little bit into the channel as well, because obviously every purchase people make from Gallery from my affiliate link obviously gives me a little bit off that sale as well. So if you want to help out and interested obviously in the airbrush, go and check that link out. Now came the more difficult part of putting Blue's iconic stripe down the centre of the fuselage. Unfortunately, this did obliterate a lot of the pattern that I've just done that down the side of the fuselage. I should have brought it down a little bit further, but here we go. This is kind of where we're at. So with the white stripe, I have made it a lot larger than I kind of needed it to be. So this was just to accommodate for the blue striping that will go down the centre of the white stripe. Now of course this is loosely based off the Raptor, so of course it's not going to be exactly accurate, and obviously we put it down the side of an aircraft rather than saying down the side of a dinosaur. But I've gone in sort of like with a bit of a squiggly sort of pattern, again just to give it a bit more of a regular rather than obviously a hard stripe, because if you look at the dinosaur in the film, obviously it's not a hard line. So I've gone for sort of like a sort of cloudy type pattern down the side, and I'll go back over it as much as I need to get a nice bright white banding. The blue banding was exactly the same and done exactly in the same fashion. As you see, it sort of trails off a little bit towards the tail. There's a reason for that, and we'll look at that in a moment. So what I also wanted to do was give a little bit of a nod to the original film in the franchise. I've masked the back half of the tail off and painted it in a very similar colour to the cockpit, so I've used buff and sky grey again, obviously in a bit of a lighter hue than what I did the cockpit interior. So then what I've done after that is masked a stripe off, which is going to be painted red. Now this part of the scheme is a bit of a nod to the Ranger Jeeps, which I thought were in this sort of beige colour, but it turns out they're actually kind of like a sort of a silvery beige, but I'd already done it by this point before I'd realised, so that's what we're sticking with. I think there's a little bit of pareidolia there, thinking it was one thing and it was actually something else. But again, painting the red striping, once I've unmasked it all up, I was really happy with it anyway. But like I said, this was the nod to the Ranger Jeeps. Now while I do this satisfying unmasking of this tail section, I just want to say a massive thank you to channel members, an old channel member John Alex Scale Modelling, for his continued support, and also new member to the channel Darren Hall. Now do really appreciate you guys being channel members. Obviously helps the channel out greatly. Everything monetary that comes into the channel stays within the channel and goes to producing the videos and, you know, materials and whatnot. But again, it's a massive thank you to you guys. Again, if you want to go down that route, there are links in the description down below, but look, quite simply just watching these videos, sharing them and liking them, adding comments does massively help towards the channel. So guys, all of you, thank you ever so much for whichever you decide to do. Now of course you didn't think I was not going to weather this bird up, even though it's a fictional paint job. Now of course I'm going to do it. So I've started off with my own panel liner for this one. So I've used some artistic oils for this. I've used Winsor & Newton's. I used raw umber and Payne's grey for this. Most of it was the brown, just to give you that sort of kind of like dirt grime look, but the grey also helping within the colour scheme as well, because I think just using a sort of brown colour just wouldn't have really fitted in very well for this. Once the paint had sort of stopped being a glossy looking colour, I got a kitchen towel, added a little bit of white spinners, not too much white spirits, not too much, you just want it just damp, just to remove the excess that's sitting on top of the wing rather than in the recess, because if you have too much thinner on there, all it's going to do is just pull all that work out and you're going to have to do it all over again. If you have any hard to reach areas, just use a cotton bud or a Q-tip. Exactly the same, just a little bit of white spirits on there and rub it around to remove that excess. Now I'm going to move on to chipping. Now realistically I should have actually done this the opposite way around. I should have done the chipping prior to the washing, but I can actually do this afterwards. I suppose it doesn't really matter, but generally I do prefer to do it the opposite way around, because it also darkens the paint, and then I'm going to do it twice. But to start off with, I just used a bit of sponge, put it into some silver, blodged most of it off onto a kitchen towel, so there was only a little bit of the paint coming off on the sponge, because then it gives us these nice sort of natural looking little chips. So I went again the same as I do with any other aircraft, particularly of this era, is gone around all the areas that I know are going to be like walked on a lot, or with stuff like the engine cowls and the gun bay ports. I would have put a lot more around those panel areas as well. And then just to sort of beef it out a little bit more, make it a little bit more worn, come in with a paintbrush and then just sort of doing a little bit of dot to dot and hitting some of the sharper edges, again giving that impression of, you know, a used airframe. I then went back to the underside of the aircraft to do some oil streaks. Now again, I'm going back to my artist oils for this. I'm using a yellow, a green, and again that raw umber, and sort of mixing them up to make this sort of greasy oil sort of looking stain. I'm trying to do more with oils rather than actually buying specifics. I'd say go from quite quickly, but I'm going from a lot quicker than I would a tube of artist oils, because you don't really need that much of the oil to make these sort of effects. It's also easier to readjust the colours to again simulate different effects. So obviously in the case of this one, obviously is going to be sort of oil stains, but I can change the colours up differently for grease or fuel or anything like that. So I'm trying to use artist oils a little bit more often, because you know you can buy a large tube, it's roughly around about, I don't know, give or take £10, and that's going to last me a lot longer than a pot of enamel products that are specifically designed for certain things. So again, trying to work out, it's still a little bit new to me to try and get these colours right, because that's something I've usually struggled with and why I've shied away from doing it myself. But for doing the stains, they are exactly the same as what you would for enamels. So what I'll do is I'll put a dot of the colour in the area that I want it to be streaking from, and then with a sharp flat brush with a small, again always small amount of thinners on it, where it's almost dry, and then just streak it down and into the airflow of the aircraft. So with Spitfires, again going from a lot of reference photos that I have of these, all the oil tends to come from around this central sort of area and all sort of streaks centrally down the tail of the fuselage. But all the same, pretty much the first time really using this, I'm actually quite happy with how that turns out. One of the last effects I need to do on the aircraft is the exhaust stains. So I've used rubber black and flat black for this, so it gives us sort of a bit of more of a grey black colour rather than just straight up black. I'm going to use this as a basis, because what I would do later on, which I've done off camera, is used a black soot pigment just to give more of again a sooty looking effect of the exhaust. You'll also see there, which I didn't film because for some reason I didn't feel like I need to do it, but you can see the 18 decal that I've used on the back there. Again, a nod to one of the Jeeps that you saw in the original film. And then finally, all I need to do is the exhaust stubs themselves. Again, I've based them in the same colour, using complete opposite what I've just been saying. I've used an enamel effect, rust effects for this, and these are streaking rust and light rust. Now I will admit there's potential chance that I will probably still keep buying these. I will try and make my own rust colours, but for the time being, because I'm not completely convinced on these and make them look good, I probably will still stick with the products themselves. So there we go, my friends, it's nearly time to show you the finished model, but before that I want to say a massive thank you for you guys for watching. Also, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, channel members, again, massively appreciated either which way you support the channel, whether it's, as I said before, liking, subscribing to the channel, sharing the videos, just watching the videos. Massively helps boost the channel, because the more you watch and interact with, the more YouTube will push that out and think, oh, people are liking this, let's see it to other people. I don't think they say it like that, but close enough. But obviously, with those of you that help support through memberships as well, obviously that helps massively, because all that goes straight back into the channel, as well as what I make off ads. Everything comes back into the channel and spent on materials and making the videos and all that sort of business. So anyway, this is my entry for the group build. It was just a bit of fun. As it says, I've done it along the lines or inspired by Jurassic Park and obviously Blue. Thought it would be quite cool and something different to do. I didn't want to just do something that was like, that's different, but I was like, at least something that goes, yeah, it's pretty cool, that. So that's kind of what I've gone for on this build. So check on the website, it'll have all the details that you need for the group build. It is very simple. It's basically just taking your favourite 3 photos of the build that you've done of the 1/48 Airfix Mk XII. Just send them in. There's a few details obviously you need to put on there, but so check the website, it'll obviously tell you what you need, and obviously the first, second and third prizes. Personally, I'm not too fussed. I've just done this for a little bit of fun, so I don't mind it. I thought it would just be good, bit of a different video as well. Anyway, it's enough for me rambling. Again, one last time, thank you guys so much for watching. Do hope you have enjoyed. Let me know what you think of this build in the comments below, and I'll catch you again soon.